Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you my June wrap up. So if you have been watching my June reading vlogs, which I will leave a link to the 4 reading vlogs that I've done in June down in the description box for you guys to check out if you haven't already, but if you have been watching those, then you know that June has not been my greatest reading month. That was due to a combination of factors. I've been super busy. I wasn't super loving a lot of the books that I was reading. I was also reading a lot of longer books. So there was like a combination of different things in there. But let's jump into the statistics. So in the month of June, I did read 14 books, which isn't a terrible number. I know a lot of people would say 14 books is amazing. For me, that's quite a low number, and that is made up of quite a few audiobooks. So it's not as good as what I would like it to be. That 14 books was made up of 12 novels, 1 graphic novel, and 1 manga binder. I read 8 books in physical format. I read 1 ebook, and I listened to 5 audiobooks. And excluding the audiobooks, so made up of the 9 other books, I read 2 books that I own and 7 from the library. Again, if you're watching my reading vlogs, then you know that I had so many library due dates and I was trying to focus on those books. But that statistic is definitely not in the ratio as where I would like it to be. I did end up reading 6,049 pages in the month of June, which averaged out to 202 pages per day. I'm not sure how I managed to get that above 200 pages, if I'm being completely honest. Maybe my reading month just felt like it wasn't as great, but overall it was like better than I thought it was. The longest book that I read was 679 pages. As I mentioned, I was reading a lot of longer books. The shortest book that I read was 146 pages. That was the graphic novel. The highest star rating that I gave was a 4-star, and the lowest star rating that I gave 3 books 2 stars. So even like I said, the books that I'm reading weren't ones that I was super enjoying. So my average star rating for the month was 3.09 stars, which is actually probably higher than I would have expected it to be, kind of just based on where my general feelings were for the month. So normally I film a mid-month wrap-up. I didn't even do that in June. I was super crappy with my uploading schedule in June, and then in addition to that, when it came time to film that video and I was already going to be late with it, and I think in the first half of the month I'd only read 5 books, I was just like, ugh, let's just not bother, and I'll talk about all of the books at the end of the month. So I'm going to be talking about all 14 books that I read. I'm going to try to go through them pretty quickly and just give you my overall thoughts. As I said, I have talked about all of these books already on my channel in my reading vlogs. So let's jump straight in and talk about the 14 books. So the first book that I completed in the month of June was The Edge of Normal by Carla Norton. This is an adult kind of thriller crime novel. It's about a girl named Reeve who in the past was a victim of a serial killer, but she was held captive for a number of years. I can't remember how many it was off the top of my head. It was like 4 years or something like that, and she was eventually discovered and saved, and it's been a few years since this happened, and there is another girl who has been recently discovered who was being held captive, and they ask Reeve to help talk to the daughter, to kind of help her because she has obviously the psychological background, having been through something very similar. So that's kind of where the story kicks off from, and then we're focusing on the kind of mystery of this girl who has recently been returned and kind of who is the perpetrator. I did really enjoy this. There's no unnecessary romance, which sometimes gets thrown into these kind of crime novels, which I appreciated. I liked that the main character, Reeve, she acknowledges quite openly in the novel that she is still not 100% okay, even though all these years have passed. Her recovery is ongoing, and she's still seeing and speaking to a psychiatrist regularly, and she's just not one of those characters who is like on the surface saying, oh, I'm fine and great. She very much is saying, no, I know that there are still a lot of things that I'm not okay, like ways in which I'm not okay, and I really liked that about her. The one thing I didn't really love about this book is that this is one of those crime novels where we know who the villain is. We have the villain perspective, and it is a known villain, so like we know exactly who it is. And for me, that takes away a lot of the suspense in, you know, when the author is taking the characters on this kind of path of, you know, the red herrings and things, and we know that they're red herrings. It takes some of the suspense out of the story for me, but it was still a pretty good crime novel, and I did enjoy it, and in the end I gave that 3.5 stars. I then read Doubt Volume 2 by Yoshiki Tonagai. This was the second and final like full bind up like collector's edition of a manga that is a horror manga. It is based on a mobile phone game where there is a like group of, I think it's 6 or 7 people or something like that, and they're all rabbits, but then amongst them is one wolf. And the wolf is slowly killing off the rabbits, and it's about everyone trying to figure out who is the wolf amongst them. And a group of these people who've played the game on like their mobile or cell phone or whatever end up meeting up in real life, and they discover that there is a wolf amongst them in real life, slowly kind of killing them off. And you're following this. I really enjoyed the first volume. I didn't love this second one as much. I really struggled in this one. There were a few, not struggle, but there were a few panels and such in the manga where I couldn't tell what was happening. I also did struggle to remember kind of which character was which a little bit, because it had been a little while since I'd read the first volume. I also didn't super love the ending, but it's still really fun and enjoyable, like fun kind of horror romp. I did enjoy it, and in the end I gave that one 3.5 stars as well. Next on audio, I listened to If I Live by Terry Blackstock. This is the third and final book in a trilogy. This is a trilogy that's basically based around a woman named Casey, I think it is, who discovers the dead body of her best friend, and due to kind of some circumstances, she knows that she's about to be framed for this murder, and so she goes on the run. Then the family of the murder victim hire his childhood best friend to track her down and kind of bring her to justice, and then the guy who's kind of trying to track her down discovers that, you know, starts to think that maybe there's more to the story and that maybe she isn't at fault, and it's kind of all about that, about her being on the run and all of this type of thing stretched out over 3 books. This does have Christian themes, and in the first 2 books, while it was prevalent, it was definitely in there. It wasn't overwhelming. In this book, to me, it was overwhelming. I fully acknowledge that I'm not the target audience in that respect, as I don't identify as a Christian, but to me, it was very this is supposed to be a thriller series, and there is a whole portion of this 3rd book where the main character is like talking about different scripture and trying to go to church while she's on the run and things like that, and I was just like, it was very overpowering to me and very much took me out of the story. The romance element of this one that kind of gets thrown in there was super insta-lovey to me. Not in terms of kind of time period, although that a little bit as well when you think about the kind of span of the series, it's not really that long, but about the circumstances and stuff as well. I was just like, oh, this is like so insta-lovey. There's also a bunch of stuff that happens in this one that I was just like, that would not happen. It straight up is so unrealistic in this circumstance to say that this would happen, because it would not. It just would not happen. So in case you couldn't tell, I really didn't like this 3rd book in the trilogy. Wasn't a fan at all, really, and in the end I gave that one 2 stars. I then read another audiobook. I read Losing Brave by Bailey Madison and Stephanie Miller. This one is described as being a young adult psychological thriller about a girl whose twin sister has been missing, and it's a little while later, and some other girls have gone missing who look similar to her twin sister, and it's kind of about that, apparently. That's what the synopsis says. This isn't a psychological thriller from the start. The issue of the twin sister being missing isn't even dealt with for like the first part of the book. I didn't enjoy the writing. Parts of this story were so unrealistic. There's a plot twist that happens in it that when the plot twist happens, I was just like, that makes 0 sense. It was one of those plot twists where you were just like, no, that would not, it was ridiculous. I also didn't like basically any of the characters. There's a whole scene in there with a character making a decision about what chips she's going to take, or crisps, or whatever they're called, she's going to take with her to school that day based on which packaging would not clash with her outfit. It was ridiculous, and I didn't like it, and I gave it 2 stars, although feeling like how much I feel like I really didn't like that book, 2 stars feels generous, but I did give it 2 stars, so take of that what you will. Next, I read Warstorm by Victoria Aveyard. This is the 4th and final book in the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. I enjoyed this. There's 2 character perspectives in this one in particular that I really enjoyed. I love, and my main thing that I've always loved about this series is that I think it's very unusual in this book from what we see generally in YA, in that the romance doesn't ever fuel the characters' decisions. If the two kind of romantic leads differ on a point, then they, and like for their own deep-seated reasons and political reasons and things like that, they stick to those things. They don't say, oh, well, because my significant other or the person that I love thinks differently, I'm just going to think how they do. And I really, really appreciate, because I don't think we appreciate that, because I don't think we see a lot of that in YA. That's always been something I've loved about this series. I liked the ending personally. I liked the kind of, you know, that I think that for them, everything that needed to be wrapped up is wrapped up, and then you kind of are left with that kind of sense of there's still more work to be done in this world. It isn't a clear cut, every little thing is tied up in a bow, and I appreciate that, because I don't think these huge political, fantastical sagas can be tied up in that way, because it's so unrealistic when it happens. But so I did enjoy this. It wasn't my favorite in the series, but I do think that the series is worth reading in my opinion, and I did enjoy this one, and I gave it 3.5 stars. I then read another book on audio. That was One Man Guy by Michael Barakiva. This one is a young adult contemporary about an Armenian boy who is, how to put this, he goes to dinner with his parents at the start of the novel, and they decide that they're not happy with how he's going in school. They want him to be on honours track as soon as possible, and so they are sending him to summer school. He's very upset about this, and he ends up going to summer school, and he ends up meeting this other boy at summer school who, a friendship, and then maybe something more starts to develop. I will say trigger warnings in this for some homophobic language. This is own voices for at least the Armenian rep. I'm not sure on the LGBT rep whether this is own voices, but it is for the Armenian side of things. And one of the things I liked about the novel is that the main character is very proud of his Armenian heritage. While he can be like embarrassed about his parents and the way that his parents handle things, for the most part, you know, he's proud of his heritage, which I really, really liked. I also liked a lot of the commentary in this one on parents and parents' expectations on their children, and how, like, what kind of impact that can have. Yeah. My favorite character was the best friend. She was basically the best part of the story, Becky. It was really enjoyable. It wasn't like anything fantastic, but I did really enjoy it. I gave that 3.75 stars. I should say that was narrated by Michael Chernus, and I just realized I didn't say who either of the other narrators were in the other two audiobooks, so quickly to touch on that. If I Live was narrated by Kate Rudd, and Losing Brave was narrated by one of the authors herself, Bailey Madison, who is actually an actress, in case you were interested. Next, I read Armadale by Wilkie Collins. Wilkie Collins is an author that I've read 2 books by in the past. The Woman in White, which is one of my favorite classics ever, and The Moonstone, which I also really, really enjoyed. This one is, it's enjoyable. It's not as much of a kind of mystery aspect to it that the first 2 have. This one is basically about 2 men. This is a really complicated plot, so I'm going to try be succinct as possible. It's about 2 guys basically who have the same name, and one of their fathers murdered the other's father, but only one of them is kind of aware of this, and you kind of have that whole thing going on. That's kind of as bare bones as I can get. It is a very long book. This is the longest book that I read, the almost 700-page book. I definitely found it slow to get going. I do love that the main thing that we have going on in this book is kind of a female villain. Really, really enjoyed that. There's also a friendship between kind of the 2 main guys in this that I really, really appreciated as well. I did enjoy it. Definitely not my favorite Wilkie Collins, but I did enjoy it, and I think it was worth reading. And in the end, I gave that one 3.75 stars. I then read Vengeance by Megan Miranda. This is the second book in a duology. I think it's called the Fracture duology. The first book follows a girl named Delaney who falls through the ice on like a frozen lake, and she is under the ice for 11 minutes, is basically dead, obviously, and she is revived, comes back from the dead, is revived, and when she returns to life, she can now sense kind of sickness and death in other people. So that's what the first book follows. This second book is set after the events of the first book, but follows a different character as the main narrator. I liked that. I liked the perspective shift, if I can get that word out. I also really liked the kind of small town atmosphere that goes on in this one, that some of the people in the town, there's a lot to do in this one with it, people think that the lake is cursed and that this group of kids surrounding the lake are cursed, and I really enjoy that kind of vibe of like a small town cursed atmosphere. It was probably my favorite thing about the book. It wasn't anything overly fantastic. It was just like enjoyable. I enjoyed it. Like I said, nothing fantastic. In the end, I gave that one 3.25 stars. Next, I listened on audio to Jaws by Peter Benchley. This one was narrated by Eric Steele. This is the book that the movie Jaws is based on. So this was published in the kind of early 70s, and it's definitely kind of a product of its time. Some of the things that I had problems in this book were there are a couple of just very casual uses of homophobic slurs. There's some very casual kind of remarks made around people of color that made me a little bit uncomfortable. There's also probably my least favorite thing about the book is that there is a female character at one point who is describing her rape fantasy, and this is a book written by a man, and I really don't need to hear about a man describing a woman's rape fantasy because I think it was disgusting to hear that from a man. I just was not into it at all. There was also not as much around the shark as I would have expected this book to have, and the parts around the shark were my favorite parts. I did also appreciate, and you do get a bit of this in the movie as well, but the commentary on, because at the start of the book and the movie, there's a shark attack right at the start, and it kind of is not advertised to the town, and that's a decision that's made because they're not sure if the shark is ever going to attack anyone else, if it just could be a one-off thing. And this is a small beach town that relies on its the summer months, and to basically, that's how it survives. All of the business and tourists and things that it gets in the summer, all the money that they make, that is how the town survives. And if they have a bad summer, they have a bad year, and it's a really hard year for them. So I did appreciate the commentary in that on how important it was for them to have a good summer, and that how much something like this shark attacking the town and having to like close the beach, and that many tourists aren't going to come, and how much that was going to affect the town and the businesses and the people who live there year round. I did appreciate all of that kind of commentary, but yeah, you could definitely, I really didn't appreciate some of the stuff that the male author put into there. Definitely not my favorite book. In the end, I gave that one a 2.5 star rating. I then read Spark by Rachel Craw. This is a young adult kind of urban fantasy / paranormal. It's basically about a girl who discovers that she has this kind of genetic thing that means that she is what's called a shield. So she has a genetic compulsion to protect particular people. So at different times in her life, she will spark with someone, and then she will just have a compulsion, like an overwhelming compulsion to protect that person at all costs. And with that, she does have some kind of like super abilities, like some speed and faster healing and things like that. And so that's kind of the main part of the plot. I did really enjoy it. It's pretty tropey. I enjoyed the romance in it, but overall, like, just everything kind of about the book is a little bit tropey. There was a kind of plot twist in there, which, while I didn't necessarily see it coming, I just didn't really have that kind of punch factor that I would be expecting from a plot twist. But I did enjoy the book overall, and in the end, I gave that one 3.5 stars. Next, I read Saga Volume 8 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This is a series that I have very much enjoyed. Volume 7 was definitely not my favorite. It's my least favorite of the volume so far, and Volume 8 was definitely an improvement on Volume 7. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of commentary in this one on trans people and abortion, which I really appreciated the commentary on both of those things, and I really enjoyed this volume kind of overall, and in the end I gave that one 4 stars. I then read Becoming Darkness by Lindsay Francis Brambles. This is a YA alternate universe historical fiction that's basically set around an alternate universe where Hitler won the war by releasing a genetic virus that turned 200 million people into vampires. There then became 2 million people who became immune to the virus, and their blood is poison to vampires, and then everyone else died. So you basically got vampires and you've got immune. So vampires don't have a human food source anymore. They survive basically on animal blood, and the 2 million people who are immune live in a city basically called Haven, and our main character is an immune who lives in Haven. She's 17 years old. Her name is Sophie, and her best friend at the very start of the novel is murdered, and that's kind of where we kick off from. I think this book would have been better served by focusing on the mystery aspects of kind of what's going on with who murdered her best friend, and her feeling like there's like some more stuff going on and people targeting her and things like that. But it doesn't. It focuses a lot on the political parts of the world and some conspiracies and things like that, which would have been like okay, but I didn't love those parts of the stories. The main romance in this book is very sketchy. It made me super uncomfortable. I can't go into what I didn't like about the romance because it would technically be a spoiler, but I didn't love it. So I really appreciated the premise. I just don't think this book was executed the way that I would have liked for it to be. I think that you could take this premise and make a really great story, and it just didn't kind of come off that way for me. And in the end, I gave that one 2.5 stars. The next book that I completed was The Night Girl by Amy Cross. This is an adult horror that basically follows a girl named Juliet who I think she's recently finished high school, and it's before she goes to college, and she gets a kind of summer job working at a retirement home. The retirement home has had budget cuts, and they only have one nurse to work the night shift, and so they want a cheap person who they can pay very little money to, who will just come in, has no medical qualifications, but just to help be a kind of pleb, you know, for the night nurse. And there was recently a woman who died in some fashion at the retirement home, and so there's some weird shit going on at the retirement home. And then you also have the factor of Juliet not necessarily being your kind of normal girl. She has some kind of thought patterns and some kind of weird stuff going on, and you kind of start to just explore that as well. This started off really strong. The very first portion of the book was super creepy, and I was really into it. This is a self-published book, and I understand that sometimes it can be difficult for those books to be edited well due to the cost involved in that thing, and that type of thing. This was one of the worst edited books I've ever read. There were so many typos and grammatical errors, to the point where on several occasions a wrong character name was used, and I just don't understand how even just a kind of cursory reread of a draft you would not pick up on wrong names being used. I don't know. There are also some parts of the book that was super unrealistic. I don't think the author really did any kind of research into how a retirement home works. There's a kind of plot twist that happens that made zero sense. Not the plot twist itself, but all of the kind of everything that came out of that plot twist. I was just like, that does not make sense. It just doesn't make sense. There was also an epilogue that was kind of 2 to 3 pages or whatever at the end. I did not like the epilogue. So overall, this book for me was just, it started off really great, and I thought, yes, this is going to be a great kind of Kindle backlist book, but it wasn't, and in the end, I gave that one 2 stars. So moving on to the very final book that I read in the month of June, I listened on audio to The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. This one is narrated on audio by Kate Reading, and I actually thought that she did an amazing job on the audiobook. So this is the main character that we're following is Mary Jekyll. She is the daughter of Dr. Jekyll. Other characters that are featured in this book are the daughter of Mr. Hyde, the daughter of Dr. Moreau. There is a female Frankenstein type character. Sherlock Holmes and Watson both make an appearance. So you've got a kind of lot of classical literary characters all coming together in this novel, and it is said to follow the daughters of the mad scientists of literature, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the storytelling, the way that the story is told. So we basically have one of the characters in the novel is writing the story of their adventures, and as she's writing the story, you get the other characters kind of commenting on that story. So, she'll say, and then Mary looked at blah, 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 and said this, and, Mary will go, I never said that, or I was not thinking that, and then the other characters will start to weigh in. So it was pretty humorous in that way, which I appreciated. I guess with that type of storytelling, that does come with a little bit of taking away from any kind of worry over if a character is going to survive, because if they're commenting on the manuscript at the end of the book, then you know that they're there at the end of the book, so to speak. But it was a very humorous way of telling the story, and I did really enjoy that. Yeah, I just loved all the literary characters, and I loved the way the story was told, and it was just a lot of fun. This is the first book in a series. I believe the second book I think it comes out in July, and I'm hoping that my library will also get that one on audio so I can continue on with the series, but it was very enjoyable, and in the end I gave that one 3.5 stars. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of June. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I have read, or any books that you were reading in the month of June that you were really enjoying. I would love to know that. How was your June reading month? I hope that it was a little bit better than mine. Like I said, I just felt like I really wasn't getting much reading done, and the books I was reading I wasn't enjoying. So I really hope that you guys had a better June reading month. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. But that is all I have for this video today. Bye guys.